Hi there. Glad you're joining me on my website today. Wrote a column this week that I hope you'll read about country lawyers. Actually, it was dumb Southern country lawyers. Not my term, and I'll tell you why it's not my term, because I've been a country lawyer most of my life. When I graduated from law school out of New Orleans at Tulane University, I was looking for some place to hang my hat and chose Faraday, Louisiana. Now, a lot of you out here have never even heard of Faraday, Louisiana. Just to update you, it's a famous little town, quite frankly, home of Jerry Lee Lewis, Mickey Gilley, the country singer of the year a few years back, Reverend Jimmy Swaggart, who is so well known as a worldwide minister. All three are first cousins, and I represented all three at different times during my law practice. I went to Faraday, hung up my shingle. I was a one-man shop, and I certainly was a country lawyer, a Southern country lawyer. The word dumb comes in because that's what the president this week called his attorney general. Now, we know that the attorney general and the president have not had a very comfortable relationship since the attorney general stepped aside and appointed that special counsel. Whether you agree or not, Sessions was a lawyer, served in the Senate, pretty popular guy, was easily reelected every time he ran, and he too was a country lawyer. So Trump does not look longingly or happily on Sessions, at least, as a country lawyer. And my column this week defended lawyers. I'm very proud of the fact that I had to work by myself in being a problem solver. And, you know, if you look on the U.S. Supreme Court, if we could take it to a little bigger picture, the Supreme Court is everybody on the Supreme Court either went to Harvard or they went to Yale, those two schools, every single member of the U.S. Supreme Court. And they go on to be teachers, and they often get right into the judiciary, maybe clerk for another judge, and become a judge themselves, appointed in the federal system. The good old boy network, they all know one another and work with the Senate committee that picks the judges and works for the president. I'm not criticizing that per se, but what I am skeptical about is all the wisdom that's given to these lawyers that went to Harvard and Yale. As I say, they often are teachers and judges, don't often have the practical hands-on experience of dealing with people. And that's something I think we're missing within government today at a number of levels. When I talk about that, I think in my own law practice, I had to take on a number of giants in the legal profession, did the best I could. I won some and I lost some. I know I went with a young farmer who was trying to buy some property from General Motors. They cut a hard deal. He and I flew up to Detroit to the headquarters of Fisher Lumber Company. Fisher has a huge gathering of lumber throughout North Louisiana. And I asked them, why do you have so much lumber? They says, well, we've had it from the time that we are making station wagons for General Motors because we were putting all that wood on the side of the station wagons, and we still have the property. My friend wanted to buy that property. He put together a variety of ways to pay for it. And so it was me and him on one side of the table and about 16 General Motors lawyers on the other side of the table. When all was said and done, the consensus of those who looked over the deal closely was that we hit a home run, that we took General Motors and bought all their property and didn't pay that big of a price. And it was through some credit swaps and bringing in the Nature Conservancy, donating some properties, doing a variety of things that basically were not that difficult, but again, just common sense. I also, on the other side of the aisle, from the civil aisle to the criminal aisle, had a number of criminal cases. Now, back then in the 70s or so, we didn't have these public defenders. Right now, we've got public defenders in every parish. All over the country, you have them. That's all they do is represent defendants. They're paid for by the state, often paid pretty well. Back when I was a lawyer in the 70s, early or the late 60s and 70s, the judge from the bench would say, Joe Smith is charged with robbery. Jim Brown, you're going to appoint him. I'm going to pay you $25 and you go ahead and have to defend him. And I had to take the case all the way through the process. I had people who were charged with first-degree murder. Remember the Jim Leslie case? You folks watching in Louisiana, Jim Leslie was a very high-profile murder that took place in, I believe, 1974 in Louisiana. It was known all over the country. Initially, viewers down here thought that it was organized labor was somewhat involved because it was the whole issue of right to work. As it came out later, it was a bunch of thugs that came from Shreveport initially, came down and killed Leslie to try to protect the guy who was kind of the chief of police up in Shreveport. They called him I believe, the public commissioner or the law enforcement commissioner. And so he did arrange for the hit, and I was appointed to represent the fellas that knocked off the hitter. And I knew the whole story, but I couldn't tell about it because under my oath as a lawyer, you could not reveal the attorney-client privileges so many of you've heard of. So I had to get into major cases like that. I took cases to the Louisiana Supreme Court. I think I'm the only lawyer in Louisiana that's ever, along with Senator Cleo Fields, a former senator down in Baton Rouge, we were the opponents in arguing a case about mandatory auto insurance in the state. And I believe we're the only lawyers in the history of Louisiana that ever argued where it was a televised hearing. So that's the first. I'm authorized to practice for the United States Supreme Court. I'm not patting myself on the back because I can name you many, many lawyers, rural lawyers, often who practice by themselves, that have had the same experiences. They have hands-on experience. They have life experience. They have people experience. And that's one thing that I don't think often is the case in the judges that are appointed, both in the South as well as the whole country, by incumbent presidents. I don't make this a Democrat or Republican thing. I don't think that Bush did a very good job of his appointees. Clinton did so-so. Right now, we've got some pretty poor judges that have been appointed by the last 4 or 5 presidents. So the point I'm making about the country lawyer, little tongue-in-cheek column if you get a chance to read it. But the point I'm making is that some pretty practical sense comes from lawyers who have to deal with all kinds of problems, whether it be divorces, whether it be the criminal cases, big cases, little cases. That gives you that hands-on life experience that I think is very, very important in dealing with the problems our country faces today. Read my column. Hope you enjoy it. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for watching.